I'm Brian Fernandez, and welcome to Biztech's Technology Show. Today, the show, we're going to be talking about the future of data centers and balancing efficiency, sustainability, and innovation. Now, to bring an expert lens on this topic, we have David Leal. He's the Vice President of Business, Southeast Asia at Delta Electronics. Delta Electronics is a global innovative provider of switching power supplies and DC brushless fans, as well as a major source of power management solutions, components, visual displays, industrial automation, networking products, and renewable energy solutions. Now, with that, welcome to the show, David.
Great, thanks for having me, Brian.
Now, David, for a start, could you give us a quick overview of Delta Electronics, in addition to what I've just said, how you help your customers and your role within the organization?
Sure. So Delta Electronics covers a wider range of power electronics, power management, IoT-based green solutions. Pretty much anything that you can think about that has power conversion involved, Delta Electronics has some sort of fingerprint involved in it. We're a Taiwanese-based company. We're listed on the Taiwan Stock Exchange and also on the Thailand Stock Exchange under Delta Electronics Thailand. We have 200 locations around the world covering sales, R&D in particular. We really are an engineering-based company, and we invest between 8 to 10% every year back into R&D to develop. Our mission is to provide innovative, clean, and energy-efficient solutions for a better tomorrow. So we really try to use our expertise in high-efficiency systems or designs to create a better tomorrow with what we're doing. My role is I run Southeast Asia, the business development, which covers coming up with different solutions across a lot of the areas that you mentioned before, which covers data centers, which we'll talk a little bit more about today, electric vehicle chargers. We also do onboard systems for electric vehicles, building automation systems, and a particularly important part for Southeast Asia is industrial automation. This is based on a lot of the expansion outside of China these days within Southeast Asia for manufacturing that we're very involved in.
So let's zoom in a little bit on the data center industry. It's had an explosive growth over the last couple of years, obviously fueled primarily also by the growth of AI and the opportunities around AI. So there's been a lot of challenges, though, by facing the data center industry in Southeast Asia, dealing with this growth. Could you give us some insights into some of these challenges and perhaps how Delta Electronics are actually addressing them?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing with data centers now is unprecedented, right? The expansion across the globe, but particularly in Southeast Asia, is really something to behold. I think even just the change in the last 18 months has been extensive. And I think Australia really started off part of that boom, and then it spread very quickly through Singapore, and Malaysia is a particular focal point at the moment. And I think, as you talked about, AI or artificial intelligence is further increasing that. And I think we have a good 8 to 10 years of this real progression within this space. But the challenge is data centers take a lot of energy. And energy is a challenge for many countries, especially as we move towards the Paris Accords in terms of lowering our energy footprint. The biggest challenge we have with data centers at the moment is finding a way to be as efficient as we can with the use of power. Some countries have good power sources, some countries don't have a lot of power sources, but in the end, we need to find a way to fuel this AI demand and other areas demand with electricity. So our job within Delta Electronics is power electronics, and it's a big part of taking power from the grid and finding a way to utilize it in the most efficient manner possible. The other thing that we need to take into account is data centers require resilience, which means it can't go down. So if somebody is accessing their data or looking to use AI engines, then it can't be turned off, right? Even 5-10 minutes, the expectation of our customers is that it is uptime is, you know, the whole year with maybe just a few minutes to spare type thing. So a big thing that we need to do in that sort of respect is make sure that we're using efficient designs, having reliable backup that is efficient with the energy. And then I think the third thing is cooling. Data centers drive a lot of heat just by the nature of the service that they're using, and finding ways to utilize that heat in an efficient manner and minimize the impact of the data center is another area that we have to continue to innovate to be able to keep up with this demand.
Now, one of the key things is, of course, because data centers are so resource hungry, um, looking at sustainable alternatives in terms of either fuels or power sources becomes critical. And I want to use an example of a specific region. You mentioned Malaysia, and before the interview, you talked about Iskandar, Malaysia, in Johor Bahru, and there's about 50 data center projects either ongoing, approved, or about to start. That's a huge demand on resources. How are we going to then, and one of the challenges and the worries around that is the fact that that's going to have a huge impact on the grid. How are we going to reduce the carbon footprint through either sustainable fuels or eco-friendly solutions, be it large-scale solar, small-scale solar, wind power, or basically hydropower? Talk to us around that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of factors in there, right? Every country needs to look at what their resources availability is. Malaysia has a strong land footprint, right? So being able to put in solar farms in is an area of being able to drive extra power into the grid. Wind farms is also the ability, given the lot of coastal regions. But if you think about Singapore, they don't have a lot of land to be able to support it, so they need to look at other options for it. And I think you talk to Australia or you talk to Vietnam, they all have very different footprints of being able to provide power into the grid. Some of it's wind power generated, or potentially Australia, which is one of the strongest solar markets in the world. They're able to get a lot from the solar industry. So I think every government has their challenges to look for the sources that come in. Obviously, everybody's trying to find ways to minimize coal-powered power stations, to minimize their input to the grid and bring more renewable sources in. Our job, especially related to data centers, is how we take that power and use it in the most efficient manner. So there's a couple of ways. As the power comes into the data center, then we use switching power supplies to be able to convert the energy from AC power into DC power for the service, etc., and doing that in the most efficient manner possibly. And just over the last 10 years, the efficiency of power supplies is gone all the way up to 98% plus type areas. So I think it's really getting to the outer extents of where it can be. The other part of it is backup. So we talked about if there is any instabilities in the grid, you know, obviously solar, it's very good during the day, but in the evenings, you'd need to have a separate source to be able to power it. Our job is to help the data center basically ride out those type areas. So we're seeing a lot of development now where generators that we're using diesel to be able to run on are being looked to be phased out just based on their carbon footprint and replaced with battery energy storage. So that enables, you're able to take the power to power up the batteries that are related to the system during the day or when it's an off-peak type area, and then discharge it into the data center when there's any sort of hiccups with the grid in that space. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges all the different governments have, is how do you cope with putting a lot more data centers Malaysia is a prime example with the vast amount of data centers that's being added there, but then making sure that it operates in a reliable fashion that meets your grid ability, and to be able to make sure that you have backups, that if there are any incidents that causes the grid to drop off, that you're able to keep that data center going. And that's certainly one of the areas that we cover.
So now we're in the middle of obviously a huge boom for you. So if I'm a data center operator or a large data center operator, why would I choose Delta Electronics compared to some of your competitors? What is your secret sauce or your sweet spot?
Yeah, I think for Delta Electronics, we cover so many areas of power electronics, and the engineering talent that we have globally to support it is one of the big areas that we attract customers to. And I think given the change in the dynamics for data centers and the design, that these days it's not a cookie cutter for you to be able to have one design and be able to roll it out quickly. Because as we mentioned about artificial intelligence is a continual evolution. The power demands is changing very, very quickly. The adaptation to those power demands on how the artificial intelligence acts based on the learning curve they have means that the power systems need to be very much designed to be able to accommodate that. We try to isolate ourselves by being very customized with what we're able to do for what customers need to be able to meet these demands out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we focus a lot on our speed to market as well. Because I think data centers in the past were long-term planning, several years in the making, several years in the rollout. But it's changing so quickly now. You've got customers that want to make decisions. They want to have data halls available within a 12-month time frame, and then they need a supply base to go with that. So we're very much focused our supply chain background to be able to make sure that we can move quickly and adapt to what our customer needs are. It's challenging, but it's exciting at the same time.
So then looking at through your lens, then where is your growth coming from in the next 12 to 24 months in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, so I think two aspects. You just can't go past the data center part. As I said, it's an unprecedented time. The data centers is not just data, right? It's processing, it's intelligence. The telecom operators, which has been a strong element of our business for many years in Southeast Asia, is moving very much to become data centers themselves. But I think on the back of just the data center area is the energy infrastructure. So we're very involved in electric vehicles, electric vehicle chargers being one part of it, but also components that go into electric vehicles, because electric vehicles are very much power-orientated devices, right? Where you've got a big battery that's on wheels and you're using that battery to be able to provide energy to the wheels and to the computers that are working through the whole area. And also within energy infrastructure is our battery energy storage systems. So these can be as simple as systems that are replacing generators for data centers, or energy storage that are supporting our customers' grid applications. Some of that can be smaller commercial industrial applicators where the power of electricity is so expensive during the day, they're trying to offset that with battery energy storage, or even households that are charging batteries during the day from the panels on their roof and then discharging in the evenings to be able to cover their household loads. So data centers, energy infrastructure, that for me are the two really big growth areas. Maybe just the last third factor I would bring in is industrial automation. So with the China plus one or Taiwan plus one, which essentially means there is a lot of manufacturing that's looking to take their manufacturing outside of China in particular, based on labor costs, maybe based on political elements. That's making Southeast Asia turn into a much bigger manufacturing hub for the rest of the world. So we see that potential is going to continue over the next 5 to 10 years. So it's kind of an exciting space to be in. Vietnam is a prime example of that area. We're seeing a lot of the chip manufacturers are expanding in Singapore and in Malaysia in particular. And then starting, and we'll see longer term, is Indonesia. Given their population, their investment in the electric vehicle business and the manufacturing, the supply chain goes with that, we'll see a lot more out of that.
Now, David, then Looking ahead within an industry context, where do you see key innovations coming from? What are some of the key trends in the next 5 years?
I think cooling is a really big part of what we have to deal with within data centers. So we used to talk about the size of racks within data centers heading towards 30 kilowatts. Now we're talking about racks and data centers getting up to 100 or potentially going to 150. You hear a lot from NVIDIA in terms of their description of where the roadmap is going. Being able to manage the heat that's generated in those buildings is a real challenge. So there's a lot of new systems that relate to liquid cooling. So CDUs is really the hot space at the moment within the data centers. That's
What is
cooling.
CDU? Could you give us
Yeah,
some
it's a
insight?
cooling distribution unit. It's
Okay.
essentially bringing liquid in to cool the chips. So it may be the GPUs from NVIDIA to be able to dissipate the heat in the most efficient way possible. Previously, that was done with a lot of air cooling, but really air cooling is not efficient enough to be able to manage the heat that we have. So there's probably two aspects for that. One is kind of the newer data centers where we'd be rolling CDUs in to be able to manage that based on the designs. And then there's older data centers where they have to adapt very quickly to the new chips that are going in there. So within Delta, we've come up with a new air-assisted liquid cooling mechanism that allows you to retrofit older data centers with that by using liquid and air cooling that with it, so that you're able to upgrade your data center to be able to support it. So I think cooling for sure is a big innovative area that we have to deal with. Efficiency, it's always driven us within the power electronics area to continue to make your power supplies more and more efficient. So looking for new technologies within the chip space to be able to cover that. And then lastly, within the battery energy storage area, I think the battery technology is evolving quickly and the industry is being pushed heavily to continue to find newer technologies that last longer and longer and give you a longer backup time. But also what goes with that is the power conversion that's taking the battery power and putting it back into the grid or putting it into the data center and making that as efficient as possible that you can. So you're not wasting any energy that you possibly can.
David, it's been a great conversation. I've actually really learned a lot. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think that we're into a new world, right? With artificial intelligence. I think it's an exciting space. I think it's going to add a lot to the way that we work and the way that our productivity evolves. Delta Electronics is very focused on making sure that the journey into AI is as efficient as possible. Ever since we've started with Delta Electronics since 1971, the priority has really been about a greener, smarter tomorrow. And that's making sure that we do the right things to be able to support the planet. Global warming's a real thing. Data centers have their own footprint within that space, and that we need to do everything we possibly can to make that evolution minimizes the impact on the globe as possible. So Delta Electronics, and certainly my team's priority is to help facilitate that.
David, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on.
Thanks for your time, Brian. Really enjoyed it.
We've been speaking to David Leal. He's a Vice President Business, Southeast Asia at Delta Electronics. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to Biztech's Technology Show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.